from Sunset Beach, Hawaii, weighing 267 pounds, the magnificent Muraco.
Why is it they call him magnificent?
The man who lifts condominiums off his chest.
Anything that's explosive, anything that's exciting, Prince of Darkness, Master of Destruction, perpetrator of violence. Get ready! I'm gonna burn this place down!
Hello and welcome to Don Muraco's Magnificent Podcast, and I'm going to pre-warn everybody. I'm very, very unwell. I've already primed Don Muraco that at some point I may have to leave the broadcast booth, the studio. He's well aware of it. Before I, bore you anymore with my gastroenteral problems, I will invite you to go on to our YouTube, Don Muraco's Magnificent Podcast. Don Muraco's already laughing at me. That really was the worst intro I've ever done. Instagram, Twitter, dontherockmorocco.com for all your signed merchandise and such. And before I ruin this introduction any further, I'm going to introduce you to the one and only Rock, the magnificent one himself, Don Muraco.
Well, I hope you start feeling better. You're languishing in misery there.
Yeah,
just look at it as a good hangover.
No, I couldn't possibly, because I went out drinking last night as well. I only had a few. I actually had to stop after 3 beers. I mean, that's really sad even for me. But I'll get over it. More to the point, you left our last episode with a sore tooth, going to the dentist. What was the outcome?
Yeah. I got fixed. I got everything. It's in good shape. Even after a year and a half not seeing the dentist, as that one they got to wait on. And I might need to go underneath and remove the root there. So I might have to go to oral surgeon.
Right. So you're not going to have
everything
to do
everything else is good. Yeah.
So not a crown at least, like I've been threatened with.
The crowns were broke.
Oh, were they?
There was a crown that broke off.
Oh no! So you've got to go. So you're gonna have the root canal and go suck it all out.
Yes, take it out. Yeah.
Oh, for God's sake! Well,
I love the dentist.
Well, it's bad news all round for both of us. Don's got dentist. I'm very unwell. But we're going to go straight into the podcast itself. And it's actually sort of like a slightly unfortunate segue there. The first thing I was going to mention was best wishes to B. Brian Blair, who had a family tragedy a couple of days ago. I don't know if you know anything more about it, Don, but...
I don't know anything more about it. So I sent condolences to he and his wife, Tony. I know that nobody should lose a child.
Yeah,
that's probably the hardest thing somebody might have to go through in life.
Yeah. Condolences from my end as well. I was hoping to have him on my other YouTube channel in a few weeks to promote his book. But
if I knew more was going on, I would have. But I don't want to add to something I know nothing about.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we'll move on to other news, I suppose, because we do occasionally do news. Goldberg returned to WWE yet again, and we're straight into the main event. Don, you're already shaking your head. I'll do the follow-up question afterwards, but what did you make of Goldberg returning?
Oh, man. Boy, if that's not grounds for the NAACP to go after the WWE, this Bobby Lashley, you got a champion. He's on TV every week. Him and Roman Reigns, every single week. They got him on TV. They're wrestling. There's no novelty about them. Why are they even champions? I have, no idea. Why they would. And there's another point with the WWE. There's this whole thing. Are they going to take care of all these guys? These Kevin Owens and Roman Reigns and they just let go a bunch of guys several weeks ago. So are they going to take care of all these guys that really dragged them through COVID and dragged them through everything? Appearing over and over again, main event after main event after main event every week. SmackDown, Raw, some tag team single. And then instead of making your everyday guy, that's taking the hit in the pocket, and taking a hit in the wallet, then they bring in somebody off the street, somebody that's not even part of their, the profession or part of their fraternity, and they feed him to what, pretty much, it's going to be a stinker of a match, because Bobby Lashley's a hell of a talent. I mean, it's physique, aside from his physique, forget about his physique, just his work, period. His work is fabulous. His presence, everything else. That's why I can't understand why I have to look at him every single week, when they should be hiding him, or, just keeping him in a coat and tie and bringing him on in like Ric Flair used to come on once in a while when he was with Atlanta and stuff, bring him on in coat and tie, and they gave him a manager for some reason. But, they just put these guys every week. Same matches over and over again. I don't understand the booking. The people like it, I'm not in touch with the, obviously, because I think it's, I'm not in touch with the mainstream. Obviously, I'm living in Hawaii and I'm old. I'm not a fanboy,
yeah.
and I barely watch I can barely watch the wrestling, but yeah, boy, that's and and going out of that, I don't see how there's any way to any kind of shock value you have to your fans if you don't bring somebody that's somebody that's not been on TV every single week. And this guy hasn't. Okay, so Goldberg, he's a novelty because you haven't seen him week after week after week after week. All you have is memories, like they did with all these A&E shows and all these the dark side things. They reignited the flame, the passion of old when The Rock and when Stone Cold and when Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart, when all these guys, were putting together good shows, putting together good matches and everything else. Not that these guys aren't today, but there's so much repetition going on. There's a variety, there's a change. There's a thing, not the same writer trying to get himself over every time. Sounds familiar? like a podcast that I just left. But yeah, I don't see it. But it'll probably draw. I guess they needed it. Obviously they needed it. The ticket sales must be stinking.
Well, that's why they actually brought John Cena back. So ticket sales, for the most part, weren't doing too well, and then Cena's bumped up the house show return sales.
Is that another? Is he going to wrestle for real?
Yeah, he's going to wrestle. I think he's got a new finisher where he sort of does like a kung fu thing, and he goes, pop, and then he backfists them, and then they go, fall over, and then he pins them, and then it's the easiest finisher in the world. Yeah,
but he's just so far he's just been promoting and running back and forth, hitting the ropes and stuff. Is he actually going to get out there and start suplexing and taking bumps and stuff?
I think so.
After sitting on a movie lot for the last 3 years, just having people bring him his lunch and not taking bumps on time for having a second come in to take his bumps for him. They slipped that Finn Balor under his nose last week. I saw the trailer for it as they're advertising how they snuck him in, and he's a great performer. And no reason, but just every week. And then who's Roman? Oh yeah, Cena and Roman Reigns. That's pretty much the same thing as Lashley. It's Lashley and what's his name, Goldberg. Yeah.
How because obviously WWE have got form of bringing legends, and one of two things happens. No new stars are made, and then people just pine for the old days when everyone used to love wrestling and used to love all the old characters, and then they disappear again, and then you've just got basically the B players left over that you see every week. How was it done in the territory days as far as using legends sparingly? So I mentioned a couple of names: Lou Thez, Eduardo Carpentier, maybe Antonino Rocca, that they brought in the territory days once in a while. How would they draw without overexposure or making the incumbent wrestlers look lesser?
Oh, those guys are businessmen. They didn't make anybody. They always made everybody look good. Blassie or Carpentier or Bobo or they're talent, and you're seeing something new. And they're all one of the boys. It wasn't like a kind of a Goldberg thing where he's kind of an outlier, and the guys have a thing for him. He is dangerous.
I'm going to give you one more piece of news that I didn't tee you up for beforehand. So And I should have mentioned this beforehand, but there was an independent federation a couple of days ago that got into some hot water with Dave Meltzer. I think he's been very negative on it, where the fans were encouraged to throw like water bottles at the former Zack Ryder after he won a championship belt. The question is, what's the hardest thing you've ever been hit with by a fan?
Oh, since I've gone, went. I got a U-bolt when somebody shot from a slingshot and hit me in the head right in the temple one time. And somebody, I was standing there behind, and Steamboat Fuji standing next to me. The Steamboat was there, and Fuji's there was it was open there for me to jump Steamboat. We was going to hit him. Hit what? I remember Koloff throwing me up in that backbreaker one time, and a bunch of eggs flying from all over the place. And I was like the center of the target, But a beer bottle in the head. Oof. Few things.
What was the worst territory for maybe not fan attacks as well, just fans throwing things at your head?
Oh gosh, old territory days. They're just depended on the time. Orlando was a rugged town. And it's hard getting to the ring too, especially if you're going to do, you're running in at the end. And a lot of the Florida towns, a lot of places, Atlanta, of course, or Georgia, New York. They didn't really do run-ins, so it was, that wasn't the case. And pretty much by that period, they kind of gone through the throwing. There was, It was consistent, Every place has their own. I think we were in Oklahoma City one time, and it was on a rodeo. They threw the boards down, stand the mat, and the ring out, and it was the rodeo. And the rodeo had been there, and they had these dirt clods. They'd put them in bags and throw them in. Oh God.
Oh, God. You really had to take your life into your hands every time you walked to the ring sometimes, didn't you?
Yeah, there was a while, yeah. Bobby Heenan got shot at in Chicago. Somebody pulled the gun.
Yeah, was that AWA or WWA, or where was that?
Well, that was Chicago, so it was a combination of Bruiser and Gagne's. The guy was whatever Bruiser was, IWA and AWA. Well, Chicago, the amphitheater, that was a Bruiser Gagne and together promotion.
Yeah, they never found the guy, did they?
I don't know. I don't know how they could. That amphitheater, that place was insane. Mm. That place was. Yeah, I was a young, sweet little baby face. Even I was terrified to get in the ring there. It was just going through this massive, a mob of people. The old Chicago stockyards. It used to be out of the Chicago stockyards.
Like if the fans were trying to throw things at the heels, and you were a baby face, but you still had to duck out the way of the heel, for people throwing stuff at them.
Oh yeah, sure. I'm bad. As I said, Ivan Koloff up the thing, and the eggs were flying, and I was the center of the target. And then other things, yeah, sure. But they don't. When they're throwing, they're not. They're not. Their aim isn't certain, so stuff flies all over the place.
No. I mean, 6 beers in, and it's probably going to get a lot worse, that aim. But I'll tell you what, we'll move on. And you actually brought up Orlando earlier, and a lot of the Florida towns, and I'm glad you did, because we have a 2-parter all about the Florida territory. And I'm going to go straight to it. How was the surfing in Florida? Was there any?
I never found much. I had a board or two with me, but no, the beaches are beautiful. Florida's more part. I guess Kelly Slater's isn't he Kelly Slater from Florida? So up there around Melbourne Beach and stuff, there's some places. Some of the real, Kelly Slater, the best, he's from Florida. Hmm. So there has to be waves there. You have to live there, on the ocean to be able to catch the, know the swells and the weather and stuff to be able to pick it up, the directions, like it is over here. You
never worked Pensacola, did you? Or did you?
No.
No. Well, I'll tell you what, then I'll move straight on that. And I suppose 1974 is the first time you appear in Florida. And
Right.
who recommended you for the job?
I was leaving San Francisco. I know. Okay, what happened? I torn my clavicle. Took a bad bump and separated it. It comes together like that and it just took like that. And back in those days, this was 72 or 73. They instead of I guess now they can manipulate it, and manually kind of readjust it and stuff. But it was torn, so they had to go and stick a couple pins in, and then after 8 weeks, they pulled the pins in, and your full shoulder just seems to drop back in place. It was, but I was kind of like winding down in Frisco because of the shoulder and stuff. So I got a call from Bill Watts, and he was booking Tampa at the time. So great. I was looking for some place to go because I'd preliminary middle of the card in Frisco. So I wasn't sitting in any place on fire. I'd been making good money in Minneapolis, so I had bills to pay. And coming out of there, I wasn't making that much money in San Francisco. So I got drove across country. First time, went to Tampa, and that was the start. That was it.
Did you rent the was it the U-Haul trailer, the whole bit?
No, not that time. I didn't have that much stuff to. I just had a pickup truck, and that was full. But went 3 days across country.
I know there's probably a few car fans listening. What kind of pickup truck was it?
A Chevy. We got it. Harvey Solon, up in Duluth, Minnesota. He was a car dealership up there. So he used to take care of the boys. And I was a pickup truck guy. I didn't know. I had no idea what the winter was like. I came from Hawaii. My first car in Minneapolis was a VW bus, which is a joke. Which is just not the car for, the first day it snowed. I had the Thanksgiving night or Thanksgiving, and the next morning I was going to Japan. So we hadn't experienced any snow, but I woke up late, the clocks and everything are off. So went racing to my partner, Daniel Monti, who a good friend of mine, came from Hawaii, was living in Florida. He had to drive me to the airport in, it was, 12 inches of snow in Minnesota, which was nothing really. But in that Volkswagen with no tires, and it was the only time I've ever seen him mad. I never planned for it. He had a Volkswagen van. Soon got rid of that real fast.
That thing probably wouldn't do 70 miles an hour if you pushed it off a cliff. Why did you pick it in the first place?
A little surf van. I was in Hawaii, California, Hawaii. Look, they were cool. Jimmy Blears had one, Couldn't keep my boards in it, whatever, I don't know what surfboards I had in Minneapolis, but the dream was there.
What was the first? All right, I'm going to just move on to cars. What was the first car that you bought new or did you ever buy a new car, or just like drive old bangers the entire way before renting?
No, I didn't buy a new car till. Well, in Minneapolis, you needed a new car, so I bought. I don't know what the hell I bought there. Oh no, I was in Florida. I bought big Chrysler Imperial and another one. This guy was a wrestling fan. David, I don't say his last name, but he was a big wrestling fan. And he'd come and it was kind of goofy. But I just let him go. And, he'd come around and he was always trying to sell me cars or this. And he had a friend, and I'm going to call this guy in Hawaii. And I knew who he was. So the family, they ran the nightclubs and stuff down in Waikiki and stuff. I said, yeah, it's 6 o'clock in the morning there. It's okay. Anyway, so time went by. I left and separated with him, and he went away. So I was back in Hawaii. I ran into the guy that he was calling, putting me on the phone with. I said, whatever happened to David? He said, he's in prison. He was a hired assassin.
What?
I know. I said, what? And he didn't seem like, he was, a little meek, little chubby guy. I said, yeah, he's doing life in prison. Oh my God. That's the kind of people you run into in this business.
Isn't it just the wrestling business and the used car business, just as bad as each
Yeah.
other, I bet.
Yeah, he was trying to get me to buy cars all over, you look great in this. He tried to sell me a vet. I didn't want a vet,
Do you know what? I was going to ask more car questions, but I'm going to leave the car questions and I'm going to go straight to my pre-prepared stuff. And first meeting with Eddie Graham then. Intimidating fella, I believe very fastidious.
Around the office and stuff when he was really, he had his cup of coffee, walk around, his shirt was open, he had, a button shirt. He wasn't a coat and tie guy. He was in Florida at that Tampa, North Albany office. It was hot all the time in there in the wrestling places. To the wrestling, maybe if you're breaking in down there, he might have been, a hard guy to look at or something. But coming across and working for him, he was a nice guy. Seemed like a nice guy. Didn't get into his mind and into the depth until later on in the territory and later on in my career that really getting to know him. But as a young wrestler, as a young guy coming across, he wasn't as Bill Watson was hands on at the time, so he wasn't as involved. Yet he was involved.
I will bring up Bill Watson in a minute, but first I'll ask you. I mentioned fastidious before, but I've heard more than one story where if Eddie Graham was giving you a finish to a match, if it was a 10-minute match, it might be a several-minute finish, almost like an All Japan style layout, very, very specific. Did Eddie Graham ever sit you down and say, I want 3 drop kicks, I want 7, or anything like that?
No, not so much that. It was just the thinking behind why you're doing what you're doing. The psychology of setting up what's coming eventually down the road. What might be happening. What the potential and and previewing it somewhere subliminally or hitting you over the head with it. That's going to happen.
Yeah. So you mentioned Bill Watts. Who else was in the office at that point? It was just Eddie and Bill in '74.
Louis Tillett, Louis and Bill. Yeah, Louis Tillett, Bill, at the time, the first time.
Who was delegated which thing to do?
Bill Watts. He was the head honcho. Yeah, and then he got the Oklahoma deal. Eddie was a sharp dude. He would bring in guys. Oh, the Johnny Valentine, Bill Watts, Buddy Rogers, on and on. Great names. The guys that competed with him. I noticed I was rubbing my nose all the time, trying not to. Great guys that were here, his peers in his wrestling day, and may have been thought to have, that type of mental aptitude, mental depth that he had, and he'd bring them in and he'd just give them enough rope to hang themselves. And when something would go wrong, and he'd step in and clean all the mess up. That's so he was hands off until he needed to be hands on.
Yeah. What was Bill Watts and Eddie's relationship at the time? Because obviously Bill would go in a few years to I think he bought Tri-State and then changed it to Mid-South, I think.
Yeah. Bill, I don't know about Bill. Through the South, out of Oklahoma, probably from Leroy McGurk's territory. I guess he was booking for Leroy, and that's how he got back in and stole Oklahoma. But he was, I guess he was prominent around the South there. I wasn't really familiar. He everywhere he'd been, Minnesota, Minneapolis, AWA, on the West Coast with the Shires, or down in LA, or in New York with Bruno. Everywhere he'd been, he'd drawn big money because he was a big, impressive guy at that time. The 6'6", 300-pound, good moving guys, well talking, good looking, good moving. They were a nom like Don Leo, and there's only a couple. There weren't a lot of them around.
Did What did you know of Bill Watts, I suppose, then, before you wrestled him? To know you wrestled him in Florida, I don't know where else, but he was main eventing with Bruno in the Garden, like a few years into his run, so he obviously got the business really quickly. Did you look forward to wrestling him, or is my imagination leading me to believe that he was quite a chore to wrestle every time, quite hard to, deal out the punches and everything?
No, he was good in the ring. He would screw up, and he got one time did a finish. He was sidestepping me, and pushing me in. I was supposed to take a turnbuckle, and he pushed me from behind, and I must have moved the ring about 3 feet. I hit that turnbuckle so hard from him pushing me. And this is a great sight. Came back to the room. He says, "Oh, you took a beautiful bump." He gave me all the credit. I just drove that ring all by myself. It wasn't his, but he was easy. He was more of a wrestling style anyway, and then he chopped meat for a little while, but he didn't really have to. And it was easy to sell him because he was so big and so credible.
Was he a bully, basically? Because you're a very big man, you look like a tough guy, and you are a tough guy. He'll have all the respect in the world for you. But if it was someone like, let's say, me going into the territory, would I be a target for Bill?
I heard he was in Florida. I don't think when he was booking Florida, he didn't give me that impression. And then when he took over in Oklahoma, Louisiana, and stuff, I heard that he'd become a real tyrant. But like I said, it's just hearsay. I guess more than hearsay. Other guys have a lot of hearsay to go down. But my relationship with them never waned or anything. I always, had great respect for him. Got along well with him.
And I'll tell you what the final question is. Why did you never go to Mid-South?
Why did I never? Oh, that was buried me deep in the heart of the United States. And I'd had my experience in Minneapolis, and that's where Vern was giving away money there. They were, so going someplace like that to where I'd have to work for a living, where there is no ocean in sight, either to the east or to the west, or the north or the south. I just it never really occurred to me. It just it was either wrestling business. When I broke in, it wasn't your goals and or my impressions of wrestling wasn't like what they have it today with the Facebook and internet and the hundreds of independent wrestling promotions and groups and all the stuff they have going down now. It was more of it was more kind of like a pursuit. You knew what you were getting into. You weren't entering the MMA, but it was a show and it was a performance, and you wanted to make money, of course, because you heard the guys, but you didn't know about The Rock and Cena and Stone Cold and these guys, 30, 40, $50 million portfolios and stuff like that. Yeah, no anticipation of hitting something like that. Go in those directions. It was I don't know, I can't describe it, but it was a different attitude, a different outlook. Up until maybe 30 years ago, or when Vince started. Over 30 years, over 30. WrestleMania. When then Charlotte was booming and Florida started booming, and New York was going crazy, and all the territories were doing fabulous business. And then people had high hopes, aspirations.
Are you saying that you didn't fancy the surfing in Louisiana?
No, down the Mississippi. Catch a big fat muddy one.
Yeah. You can surf straight into a riverboat casino, at least. That would be
that would be it. The dance hall girl.
I'll move on then. What made Florida a unique territory and a popular territory?
Boy, Florida. Just Florida. People love living there, God, you have to you have to call the police to get guys to leave the territory. People just, they loved that whole South. Guys like Buddy Colt and there's a tremendous foundation of wrestlers and workers there. Colt, Paul Jones, naturally the Briscoes and Kearns later, and guys like that. But Malenkos, and Eddie, of course, Sammy Steamboat from Hawaii. All those kind of guys, Cyclone Negro. A lot of the real solid, the generation just ahead of mine that really had formed that area. And then Florida, Orlando, West Palm, Miami, Tampa, Orlando. They're just even in those days before now, but even in those days they're just magnificent party cities.
While you read your text, I'll ask the next question then. What was a typical Loop week in Florida? Do you remember?
Originally, it was Orlando Monday, Tampa Tuesday, Wednesday Tampa TV, Wednesday morning till about 1 o'clock, and then that night Miami Wednesday night. Thursday, Jacksonville, and Friday they had Fort Lauderdale or Tallahassee. They split the territory up there, or spot show, and then Saturday would be usually a nice a big town close like Lakeland or St. Petersburg. It was blowing off. There's a championship, or Sarasota. There's several nice cities, And then Sunday, my God, I don't remember what Sunday was. It wasn't off, that's for sure. Maybe it was off. Who knows?
Who knows?
But that was originally when I went in. Then it changed later.
Speaking, because you had three major runs, so 74, 77, and then 79, 80, and then you spent like a month in 81 as well. But somebody actually asked me to ask you this. What were the differences in payoffs between 74 and 80? And I know you're in different places on the card, from mid-card to main event. But what would maybe a typical payoff be in 74 in a typical mid-sized arena compared to the later years?
Gee. We'd get all our pays in a weekend. Pretty much you went by your weekly average. Your weekly gross as a wrestler. And you're depending on where your card, they kind of balance you out from preliminaries to middle in the card stuff, and then naturally, if you're on the top, you get bigger, bigger paydays. Well, I don't think the payoffs actually changed that much. It's just they adjusted with the ticket prices, of course, but and the times and stuff. But I don't believe that they really changed. I was my first time in was probably doing about 800 to 1,000 a week, maybe. I don't remember real well, but it seemed like that it seemed in that neighborhood.
So you weren't getting rich, but you were getting tanned and experience and everything.
Yeah. Well, that was good money in 74. It wasn't 1,000 a week wasn't a bad grill. 50, 75, 70 grand a year was a good year back in 74.
Definitely, it's a good year this year.
Yeah.
I will go back to 1974 then, and one of the people that you wrestled with as a good guy, because you were a good guy in 74 and 77, weren't you? Mm-hmm. In 74, you had a bit of a run with Pac Song. Memories of Pac Song, and also Gary Hart, who managed him.
Yeah. Nice guy, gentle giant. He had great success in the South. I see him. I guess he had that monstrous looking face, and he was lean bodied, and he could just keep going and going. He would take concrete blocks. Just busted up concrete or even the bricks that the judo guys break. Usually they lay it on, they'll stack it and they'll, put a little balance in between so there's give. So when you hit the block, it continues through and stuff. Not Packy Boy. He'd lay that thing on the cement and he would just chop that thing and chop till he pulverized, till it just turned back to cement, from concrete to cement. He had some, and he'd throw that kick at you and it just, if he ever hit you with that kick, I'm sure a couple times I went a little hoarse. Just getting close to it.
Did he have like one hand much bigger than the other? Like the karate brick chopping hand?
Probably, yeah, that right hand. I mean, it's unbelievable. He just laid on the. When we were doing in the back there where we did the interviews against the ring in Fort Hest in 106 North Albany in the sportatorium there. He just laid the brick on the cement, and he chopped a brick and adobe brick, and he chopped the concrete. He just chopped it up. I mean, so it was amazing. It was awesome.
What about Gary Hart then? Because, I mean, obviously he had visions of being a booker and being on the creative end for quite a while because he went to do that in Texas, I believe. Did he have any idea that he'd want to do that in Florida, or was he ever pitching ideas, or was he just simply a manager / wrestler?
Sure, he was an great manager. Good manager, take care of his heels, would stand right there with his heels, and Anthony take care of the baby faces too, because I was a baby when he was there. He was, he wanted to go back to Dallas, is what he wanted. He wanted that book in Dallas, but that with the Von Erichs, as many birds that were to feed the nest, that was just an impossible job. And I think he got some type of blood disease, but he was real close with Barnett and all the promoters and everybody. He was an interesting guy, intelligent man.
When someone said, or when someone asked him, so what's your wrestling nickname? And he said Playboy. Were you like, oh yeah?
No, well, as professional wrestling, everybody, it's kind of one of the, what I was thinking when Orndorff passed last couple weeks ago, when we, in the middle of the thing, how Vince McMahon had organized, to another time, had organized his territory to come full circle, like 40 years from now, where Orndorff and I were pretty much the same person that started, on Vince's road that he'd used to, and then, down the road came the character, the marketable characters, the ones who are able to make toys out of, able to make lunchboxes and stuff out of, everybody had a killer bee, or a parrot, or Hercules had chains, everybody became a marketing tool after a while. I wondered I'm sure that probably wasn't in the grand scheme, but I think I eventually how it grew to be.
Think how great the killer bees would have been if they actually had a nest of bees that he brought down to the ring. That would just be that's gold. That is absolute gold. I'll ask one more Gary Hart thing. Salty individual, streetwise. The legend of the razor blade in his pocket or on the tip of his finger. Did you ever see it, and did you ever learn the art of zipping someone who got too close to you with a blade?
No, he had him. I never saw it. He never. Was it never? We were, it was. Well, I was. I wasn't involved. I was involved in '74. I was got a good position there, but no, never saw the Psalm zigging. That was from old Mark Lewin in the Sheik days.
It's the best.
So the Sheik was out there performing lobotomies, dissections on the crowd.
Going back to Pac's song, and the biggest storyline in Florida history, we all know it. Dusty Rhodes turns good guy against the evil foreigner Pac song. But the first question is with Dusty Rhodes. How was his presentation different as a bad guy as opposed to when he became a good guy?
Not at all. same. Well, more organized. His interviews, and naturally he had to adapt his ring work a bit, to the more the more boogie woogie stuff and stuff. But he was as a heel, he was a good, hard, solid heel. But it was his promo, and it was his promos and his look that carried him. He had the dynamic, booming promos and stuff. And they said that at the time that he was doing a Thunderbolt Patterson impression. That he was a white black man, a white man trying to be a black man. I was never around Thunderbolt, and I know he's Jerry Briscoe's close friend, but I've a couple handshakes and a couple hellos, but I never spent a lot of time in the territory watching or seeing much of T-Bolt. But he was like one of the first black men to come out, with the shucking and jiving and hey baby, and they did all that stuff. Stuff that if Rocky Johnson had picked it up, he would have been the greatest black man of all time. If he'd have been able to, with his in the ring talent, his skills, it would have been incredible. But Dusty was no different as a heel. As a heel, he almost was a babyface anyway. He was the kind of guy that had to turn. I remember I first met Dusty in Japan. We went over there for I think it was 1 week or 2 weeks. I forget. It was at Kokusai, the independent, the first opposition they ever had to New Japan or All Japan, when Kobayashi and those guys and we were there. Hollywood Blondes, Dusty, myself, K.O. Yates, Billy Red Cloud. Oh God, I'm sure there's somebody else. I can't think of it. But so I met Dusty first. And, on the bus and stuff for a couple of weeks, and we were talking. I'd seen some of his stuff that he brought from Oklahoma, Louisiana area where he come from just previously. And seen it. So I was at the airport going out on a Saturday and ran into Larry Henning by the barber shop or the shoe shine or whatever it was, on waiting to board the planes in Minneapolis airport. And the TV was on, and it was Dusty's first interview, first Minnesota AWA interview, and he came on, hey, baby, it's Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream, boy, that was it, I knew it was coming. I'd just spent 2 weeks prior with him, and I knew what he had, what he'd gone down, but he in that first, just to see Larry Henning. His reaction and stuff, and boy, this guy's over first night.
Who did that style of interview first? Was it Dusty or was it Superstar Billy Graham?
Woo! Loaded question.
Ha!
Superstar was those Superstar. Superstar was kind of a little different. It wasn't the same. Then Superstar had the body. But Superstar was a kind of hip jive kind of hip, where Dusty was the, baby, it's American Dream, baby, coming in. The Superstar was a little cooler, a little downplayed. I don't know if they were similar though. I never, I kind of considered that, but never really, never put them to the test. Good question.
I will. Well, yeah, I didn't even write that down. So I'm trying to think who, the lisp, the affected lisp, and who came up with it first. And I think it's pretty close.
Well, I know Superstar. I was in L.A. with. When was I in L.A.? Have to be 74. Before 70. Before or after 74. Yeah, I know Dusty first. He had it, and Billy was. See, but I didn't run into Billy till Los Angeles when he was taking Jerry Graham around. So that had to be when that was the very beginning. That was before everything. Then that would be like 72 when he was babysitting Dr. Jerry. So he was doing it then too, but so was Dusty. I don't know if they were both doing their own thing. I don't think either one stole from. I don't think they stole from each other at all.
The first time you were in Los Angeles was 1970,
Yeah.
and it was NWA Hollywood 1970.
Yeah, that's when Superstar was there, and Dusty was already going in Oklahoma and Texas and stuff. I don't know what his promos were like, but I imagine they were pretty much building, growing, learning.
We'll give it Superstar then. We'll give it Superstar. I'll one thing that is absolutely you must talk about is Dusty Rhodes, Texas Outlaws tag team partner Dick Murdoch.
Oh, Captain Redneck. Hell of a worker. From that Amarillo. His dad was a world champion. He came from a wrestling family. Dad was Frankie Murdoch, was it?
I don't know.
His father. It was my father's in the business. He came out of that funk West Texas Amarillo wrestling school. Where those guys, as easy in the ring for him as it was walking or sleeping or anything else. They were just, he would go to Japan. He could go to Japan or anywhere in the world, actually. We'd go to Japan 20, 30 minutes, not even breaking, it would just go through the motions. Just go through the motions. It was just a natural. It was just a tremendous worker.
Dusty Rhodes, when he was still alive, he used to always talk about just the wild stuff him and Dickie used to get up to. Do you remember any of the stories?
Well, Minneapolis, they rode a jackass into there's a country western into the country mule or donkey into there's a country western bar downtown Minneapolis. They rode all kinds of stuff fighting. They're always fighting in bars. I used to sneak around and have a beer with them every now and then, in a few places. Ray, Dusty, and Murdoch. They're always. Can't think of the country. I didn't hang out. But it was a big country western joint in Minneapolis way back when they used to go down there, and I'd ride around and kind of hide in the corner once in a while.
Do you remember? And I suppose you don't really, but I'll ask it anyway. Is Dick Murdoch's reaction to when Dusty decides to go single and become the biggest star in Florida, in the history of Florida, maybe, and Dickie was sort of left out in the cold for quite a while. Do you remember reactions or any fallout between the two?
I know it was a woman that broke him up it was a love affair that broke him up in the beginning.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Minneapolis.
Was she worth it?
Well, evidently so, yeah.
No, apparently so. Yes, so the next question I've got to ask from one Dick to another Dick. Dick Slater, you told me that you rode with him for a while and he was a good friend. So if you had stories on Murdoch, you must have a million on Slater.
Oh, Slater. Oh, he was just a gifted athlete. Always. He was from Tampa. Hell of a football player. Rumored to knocked out John Matuzak and the legendary tough guy in that Tampa area. But his work in the ring was phenomenal. I remember the first time I saw him, I was very impressive. How he was, and then afterwards, just getting to be friends with him and hanging out. He pretty much kind of kept to his own. He always, he's had he had a Corvette or a Porsche or something he used to drive all the time, and he'd be racing down the road, he'd pull up, and next second he'd just be gone, just one of those type of things. So he kept to himself quite a bit, but he and I were friends, and then we were in Japan, spent some time in Japan. Who was in that crew? Dan Spivey, Stan Hansen. And Sting came over later, and I heard him singing. Had a problem earlier in the Oklahoma territory, but they had no trouble there. But everything was cool.
You must. It's not even a question of if, but you must have seen him hit somebody at least once. even if it was a fan.
Oh yeah, he could not pick him up and put him down. You know, he's another guy who never made a big show of anything. You know, it was just boom, boom, quick. You know, it was just that, and then just move on. You know, he was a tremendous talent. Till good mind for the business, good mind, great mind in the ring. Until he went, I guess he went through the side of Terry Funk's van one night, head first. They got in a, that was, ever since then he was kind of punchy, you know, or, you know, organized. His thoughts became disorganized.
Are we talking head first or in a car?
In a car.
Oh, right. I just thought he just ran in head first.
Went through the side of a van. That's what he told. That's what somebody. He said he went through the van. They got in a wreck, and he went through the van. Boom. Yeah. Brain damage.
Yeah. I've heard. Actually, I'll move on to this one then. Did you ever split rooms with him? And probably in your early career, it'd be a different answer to later in your career. But were you a big splitter of rooms to save money, or as soon as you had the money, you were on your own?
Pretty much on my own. Most of the time. Splitting rooms. I was never. Earlier, I don't think I was ever in the situation where I had a partner or, you know, somebody I traveled with that closely or that much where you know, I were living together. With Doug Gilbert and Scott Casey, I lived with in Texas. But I don't know that we split rooms. I think on the road, you know, we got, you know, well, Doug Gilbert and myself rented a house in Dallas once, and then, you know, yeah, I was never much into splitting rooms.
No, I don't blame you. We'll move on then. And Gordon Soley, the voice of a wrestling generation or several generations in Florida and probably Alabama and even WCW in the early WCW years. Did you realise how revered Gordon Soley was as an announcer? Did you ever watch yourself back on the shows? Did you even have time? Or did you only know him at the shows?
I knew him out of the shows and around. I would go up. I was doing the Georgia TV on Saturday morning. I would well, he'd go up the night before, obviously. Often I did too, because Atlanta would run Friday night. But, yeah, Gordon was a good guy. You know, he was, well, you knew there, you know, every territory, Hank Renner in Frisco, Gene LaBelle in LA, and that crew down there, everybody had their Gene Okerlund when he was with the AWA, and then when he came over to WWF. You know, everybody, there are guys that just were extraordinary announcers. I'm sure other guys that I didn't have the pleasure of, you know, dealing with, you know, Tennessee or Oklahoma or North Carolina or somewhere like that, you know. I remember there's Hank Renner in San Francisco, who I dealt with, you know, a lot. And he was easy and good and called the matches and did. But Gordon was, you know, Gordon had so much of the talent that there's so much talent and so much ability was going through Florida and Georgia in those days that he was just, you know, he just had a knack for it. He was just, you know, well, he was brilliant. You know, he was at his job. He was, you know, one of a kind.
Yeah. Was he still famous at the time in Florida in the 70s for having a bit of a tot of whiskey under his table, or did that come later?
It must have come later. He wasn't. He was, because Eddie would go in and out of spells where he was teetotaler, then AA, then he was then he'd go off the wagon and on the wagon. So I mean, Gordon probably most of his business he just did business though. You know, when it was time, it was you know, for the live shows or for the interviews or when he had to work, he was always there. He was never soused. You know, afterwards he would have a good time. But you know, he was total professional.
Total professional. Going to another total professional, Jack Briscoe, and you made mention of it in a later interview in '79 when you're the Magnificent M, that you were sick of being compared to Jack Briscoe. Back in '74, you would be the first person to break the figure 4 headlock/leg lock, whichever one you said on the internet. I think you might have said head at one point by accident, and then you went, and also the leg lock.
The leg lock.
Jack Briscoe, as far as I'm concerned, because I grew up with Big Daddies, Hulk Hogan's, Steve Austin's The Rocks and that kind of thing. Jack Briscoe, just tights and boots. What made him so great?
Good. Well, he's an amateur wrestler. He got the business. He was easy to work with. He was this guy's going nuts here. Trying to sell me a motorized wheelchair. I don't want one. I said they don't stock them here in Hawaii.
Oh, he's ringing you now.
Yeah.
He's probably ringing you from prison. It was that guy who was chasing you for the car, selling your cars.
yeah. David's friend. Where was I?
Jack Briscoe. Why was he so great?
Jack Briscoe. Oh, yeah.
Was he a heel for the most part in the 70s?
A heel?
Yeah. Or was he always the good guy?
Unless he went into your territory. Unless he went into their territory, and he like Dory Jr. Would come with the uppercut or something after. But back then the champions were Kiniski was double ugly, so he was always a heel. But Kiniski could go all day long, as Dory Jr., as Jack, and he had that style. I know Jack was just a phenomenal worker, a good talker. Later on in the Backlund mold, he was the amateur wrestler, that was well respected, well liked, and could deliver. Somebody could build. Somebody could, foundations you could trust. He and Jerry did come from, not meager, but, simple living in Oklahoma. I don't think they lived on a reservation, but they, Indian neighborhood, not Native American, background in Oklahoma, which, probably, kind of a little rougher existence than normal back in the 50s, 60s when they grew, when they came up. So moving to Florida or going somewhere else to those guys, that was like heaven. So a lot of people going to Florida, is really an upgrade. It's even for people coming from Hawaii that don't surf, it's a big upgrade. You got the food, the women, the sun, you got everything there,
Do you
Disneyland?
Other people credit Jack Briscoe for making you a main event star. Is that fair to say?
He was there, I'm sure. My exposure with him, whether I would have or not been, I developed my interview style, developed my working style. I had a working style when I had. That looks like Jack Briscoe and like Jack. That was a theme that we carried into. I guess a couple of people remarked on it, or somebody may have remarked about it. So that was a plot or a theme that we carried over into the wrestling. Our wrestling aspect, our wrestling outview wasn't a glaring oversight or anything like that. And I did have long brown hair, and it was thinner.
Why was Jerry not quite the superstar of Jack? Was he missing something, or bad timing, or always in the shadow, or what do you think?
Well, Jerry got his share. He I guess timing. He came after Jack. He did. He had good runs in Charlotte and. Later, Florida and the territories. Jerry was the bookkeeper. Jerry did the numbers. So while I don't know if he was pushing himself or he wanted to get pushed, or when Jack was out, sowing the fields. Jerry, they were buying up property. They're buying up all around Tampa Stadium. They bought up half of Tampa and everything else, So Jerry had his points as well. Doctor in books, buying buying apartments and buying houses down. I think they owned Stampa Stadium for a while.
Did they really?
No.
Right. I was going to say, you really outfoxed me on that one. They did buy part of the Georgia territory that Vince McMahon bought Black Saturday. We won't go into that. But do you remember the brief time that the Briscoes were in the WWF before Jack just upped and left and just said, I'm done? Or were you not in the territory at the time?
No, I worked with them a few times when they were there. They were around. Yeah, they were. We came back. I don't know where we came back from. When we landed, we were in Newark. Everybody's kind of. They were in a hotel. I was in an apartment with my family. They were still living in Florida, but we were in Newark, and the parking lot in Newark. If you don't, it's a red eye flight overnight, all night. So we were wandering around in sub freezing weather in Newark Airport trying to find our cars, and it wasn't happening. If we're going to the right lot, or everybody's still in the fog from flying overnight, and the downers you took to go to sleep, and then trying to get back up, trying to find your car in the middle. And Jack was walking around in 15, 20 degree temperature, and he just says, I'm over this shit. I'm out of here. And that was it. That was the end of Jack Briscoe in New York. That was the end.
I can't believe you didn't say the same thing sometimes when you're in the snow. Jerry Briscoe did remain. What was his role in the WWF in the 80s?
Well, he left. He went home for a while. He was back. He was running Florida, and went back to the Florida office as well. This is before the big Battle of Columbus, Ohio, took place, and all the TVs started going all over the world. Yeah, he was back there with Florida, running Florida with Dusty and Steve Kern and a few of those guys. The CFW, CWF, Championship Wrestling from Florida. He was still there, and he came in later, as an office guy with Pat.
So basically, agent, or was he just liaison?
Agent, yeah, agent, in office agent though. He most of his work was. Well, when he came back, I was gone. So I don't know. I don't think he traveled though. I'm pretty sure he would just go up to Connecticut for part of the week, whatever it was, and then go back to I think, and then go back to Tampa or go back to where the Monday night show was or their big show, and then go home. He commuted a lot. I don't think he ever took a home up in Connecticut. I don't know, but I would guess he didn't know.
One person that I'm going to go completely off, one other person he had a big feud with in 1974, and he's also, if you go on your Wikipedia page, he is in your Wikipedia page with you, the Mongolian stomper, Archie Gould.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a really bloody shot in black and white. It's a great shot. Bret Hart described him as the best wrestler to ever come out of Canada. Jim Cornette wrote on his website, the stomp had so much heat that oftentimes he was allowed no offense against the babyface and would just walk out of the match for a count-out after several minutes of wild action so that the fans wouldn't hit the ring or riot to save their babyface hero. Was that the case in Florida as well? Was he just that hated?
Yeah. I don't know. He just is something about him, that just the way where he did that working when he jumped, and his movement and the way he carried himself, and he just showed up and started drawing money. And he was I don't know if there's anything exceptional about what he did or that happened, but it was just his style, his gimmick, and everything just seemed to get right over.
Was he like a legitimate tough guy as he looked?
I heard he was a cop. He was a cop somewhere around Hamilton, Ontario, or somewhere. Part-time. I don't know. He could be. He was a nice guy. He was 74. I saw him. When I was leaving there, I put him over as I was leaving the territory, because I did move up the card quite a bit in Florida as I got there, and I put him over as I was leaving, and I ran into him. I guess he was leaving when I was coming back in 78 or 79 or something, or 77. something like that. And he was, and, he was a good guy, friendly, not
he-
Mongolian at all.
I was going to ask, did he ever do that thing where if he was ever caught out in public, he'd just be a mute? Because he wasn't a mute in Canada, he was just the stomper. But everywhere in the continental United States, he was the wild Mongolian who never said anything.
Yeah, I don't know. He was a heel. I was a babyface. These were the old days. We were strangers in the night, except for the night.
You lost a lights out match. You actually mentioned this before. You lost a lights out match with the Stomper. What the hell is a lights out match? I should know this, but I've never seen one.
It's a Texas death match, no rules match. Nothing happened. It's a chain match without the chain, strap match, cage match. It's one of those matches. What they do is they have the main event, whether maybe it's the champion's in town or Florida champion, whatever the territory champion is, or whatever the main event happens to be that night. They have that, then they flicker the lights on and off 3 or 4 times, and then the lights have been turned off. This is unofficially, not officially sanctioned by the NWA. So this is a lights out match. This is basically a fight with a referee and they're filming it and an announcer, and it's a lights out match.
So it was. It was any kind of like no rules match, but they just like flipped the lights on and off a few times beforehand.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, no holds barred, no disqualification.
What was Florida's rules in particular, or?
Yeah, that was it. Just another lights out.
Do you remember Florida's particular rules, or just
anything goes? Like a Pier 9 brawl. Pier 9 brawl, lights out match. No disqualification, no rules, false count anywhere. And one of those type of that's all it was. It wasn't just a new name for same old story.
I know what you were going to say as well then, but same old story. I was going to ask you about Terry Funk. I'm probably going to skip over because we've got a little game at the end that I actually do on my other channel, and I fire some names at you. But just before I do, I'm going to ask you, was Eddie Graham responsible for booking you through All Japan in 1977? Because was that your first Japanese trip, or was that not?
No. See, I don't know who was probably Tally Ho, Blears. I don't know who was responsible for that. As long as I had a trip, and then that's when Koloff jumped in my throat, and I had the blood and stuff, and I left for like 3 weeks and came back and worked around the territory with Ivan. Blew it off in that big cage match with him in the St. Petersburg Bayfront.
Right, so I'll do the finale, is it, where I usually do this on my other channel, WSI. So I'm going to give you a firing line. I'm going to fire some names at you from the earlier Florida run. And we did this before the very first time I interviewed you, in fact. And you just give me your opinion on them, if you met them. If a funny story happens, But I'll give you a few names. And the first one, actually, to be honest, you've mentioned half of them already in the show. So so I know you've met them at some point. The great Malenko.
I know Dean and Joe. Never met him, but he is I guess he's the heel that he's Eddie Graham's heel. I suppose, he was Eddie Graham. I guess the biggest pop on TV that they've ever had down there. I guess Eddie kicked his false teeth out of. God damn it,
Vince McMahon.
Yeah. Eddie kicked his false teeth out of his hand and then stomped him on the ground. That was yeah. But yeah, I didn't know him. I guess he's a hell of a wrestler. Tremendous condition. Worked out. Good friends with Carl Gotch. I don't know him. I don't know him. I know I was in Japan with Dean and Joe, and then. I was around somewhere with Dean. Funny guys, Dean is really. Joe's a little more serious, and both good guys. Tremendous, nice performers, nice I don't know why they're never. Well, they're a little small, a little light, and probably now, and a little different style. But nice guys. Dean was funny guy.
Dean Malenko, I've heard, is like really dry sense of humour and a real lech as well on occasion.
That I know.
I'll move on then. The Super Texan. Do you remember who played the Super Texan?
No, who?
Austin Idol.
Oh, super! He was. We're just two ships passing in the night. Nice guy. Man, Mike McCord. He was. I think that was in '74, right?
Yeah.
I was coming into '74, and he was on the plane crash with Bobby Shane. Where the Bobby Shane died, and his feet, he couldn't walk, or he was all bummed out for a while. He was a mess for a while. Then he went up to Pensacola and stuff. I talked with him. He had a chow chow. I had a chow chow. So he was a nice guy. I didn't get the opportunity to spend a lot of time with him, or get to know him real well. But what I did, power lifter, bodybuilder, good guy.
I hope hit sort of more of a home run on this next one. Rip Hawk.
Rick Bork.
Hawk.
I never was around him too much.
Oh, I'm 0 for 3 here.
Rip Hawk. Well, he was around. He's older. He was that's Sweet's partner, right? Sweet Hansen.
I think that sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like a generation. He was like I worked with him several times. Great guy. Didn't never got close to him. Never got really uptight and close. But always friend. Not a bad word to say about him. Or never had the opportunity to find anything bad.
The next one is, so I'm sort of 0 for 3 there for people you never really got to know. I'll try Tom Jones.
Tom Jones, he was a good guy. We were baby faces starting off. He and Danny Hodge were close friends, and loved his ladies. Old Tom Jones. He made a living. He had a big van, kept an apartment, just traveled, just from territory to territory. Like I said, there was a different attitude, different mental attitude in being a wrestler in those days. That going around making a living, saving some money, and it wasn't you just like being a wrestler. He liked being a wrestler. He got pushed. He was a good black guy, and he was one of the top black guys. So he got pushed at times, and at times he was relegated.
Was he one of those when the van's rocking, don't come a knocking types?
Could be. It was early '74, and I was kind of barefoot and blinded in those days. I had a crazy wife and myself in those days.
Excuse me. Someone you do know, Buddy Colt, who passed away, I don't know, a couple of months ago, maybe?
Yeah. And, the backbone, the foundation of any, he's your Jack Briscoe heel. You get him in whatever belt, Florida championship, or the Florida had 4 or 5 belts. You put a belt on him, get somebody else hot, he could, or knock off 3 or 4 guys, and then you had somebody else hot, another babyface that you wanted to carry it for a while. You drop it to him, he'd go quiet for a couple of weeks, and come back with the Southern Championship or the Florida TV Championship or the United States. He was one of those guys. He was a foundational guy. Always had a heat. Great worker.
What was his character? Because I've never seen a match, I'm sorry to say. But he sort of looked like in the mould of the Buddy Rogers, good body, blonde hair. Was he sort of a tribute to him?
Yeah, a good-looking, rugged guy. Not much of a gimmick, really. Just that, I'm going to go and I'm going to kick your tail. I'm going to this and that. And I hit you. he used the thumb. He had the thumper thing, and just a solid piece. You know, that every Georgia, Florida, all the places that he went to work. You know, he was a champion. You know, rotating champion for in many instances.
Bobby Jaggers. Now, I think he was a mainstay, so you must know him.
I know Bobby from. I know. I didn't meet him. I met him I knew him before Florida. I met him. He came to San Francisco to Roy Shires, and oh God, go back to the Fuji ribs and stuff like that. Bobby Jaggers was a nice guy. Never didn't bother anybody, didn't hurt anybody. But he knew all the stories like he was there. He knew stories about Luke. He knew stories about Buddy Rogers. He knew, and he would tell them all, and he would talk. He loved to talk, and it was. I thought, funny guy. Some guys he would rub the wrong way, like Lonnie Main and Fuji. And unfortunately, he lived up around them, and they all lived up around Hayward, California, outside of Oakland, outside of San Francisco, and they used to take him. They also Johnny Eagle, English wrestler. They used to go somewhere up there at night, and they usually get him blind drunk. They'd get him dead drunk, and then they do stuff to him. And they just do stuff to him. Find him sleeping in his car someplace. Or I heard one time he got in his car and they painted his windows black. And just stuff like that, but he was a nice guy. And he came down to Florida, and I was getting ready to leave there. It's the same way, he could do your business. He was a good worker. He was a good hand in the ring, and could talk. And he had that, that look that you didn't like, that would make you dislike him.
Another look that you might not like, Bugsy McGraw.
Great. He didn't develop till later in the business when he finally turned. I mean, he was a great, super. I worked with him a lot in Australia, Bugsy McGraw, and he was a heel in Australia. I was a baby face. He and Butcher Bradigan were partners. When they were a 6-man tag, I had the two guys, Larry O'Day and Ronnie Miller, the two guys that owned the territory, and myself, a 6-man tag with Bugsy, Butcher Brannigan, and Steve Rackman. Steve Rackman is the guy that's Gronk in Crocodile Dundee.
Oh no, Donk, yeah. The massive guy.
Donk. Yeah, he was a manager. He was a manager there, and I remember a match in Melbourne with Bugsy but Joe Nova Brannigan. He threw his back out the night before, so he was my back. He was a big baby, nice guy. Great guy, but he was a big crybaby. So he was, my back. So he called the hotel. So the hotel said they send the doctor up. This is in Australia now. So they send the doctors, okay. So they shot in his back. They shot him with about 80 milligrams of Valium. And he came, and we were wrestling in Festival Hall in Melbourne that night. Big house, 6-man tag. Rackman was in the ring, and we were going to kill Rackman for some reason. So started out the match, and he started anyway. He got he couldn't see anyway. This is more about Brannigan than it is about Bugsy McGraw. He couldn't see. He had horrible vision anyway. So he started out the match with Larry O'Day. Took him over, had an arm, went to kick him in the arm, kicked him right in the eye. Boom. Yeah. I said, Larry tags out to Ronnie Miller, the other owner of the territory. Ronnie comes in, 1, 2, boom, hits him right in the mouth. Bloody nose, back in his teeth. Now, the 6-man tag, he's looking around. He's looking around for me to come in and make a save. Brother, I wasn't going anywhere. I was holding the end of the turnbuckle pole, hiding outside the ring. I wasn't getting anywhere near that fall. He was just built on self-destruction. Another time, Bugsy McGraw, what a good guy he was. We had we were Nikolai. It was me, Nikolai, and Bad Leroy Brown. I was a heel now, and we were Manny, Steve Kern, Manny Fernandez, Steve Kern, and Bugsy naturally. So Bugsy was on the corner. They were so Kern and Manny were giving Nikolai the business. They duck under him and whack. They smack him in the back. And Nikolai was just a big country goof. Jack. It was a big country goof. He goes, whack. You hear him whack him in the back. And Nikolai go, oh, let me get out of here. Get these friggin' dogs. Yeah, so they would duck under Nikolai and boom, smack him in the back hard. So you hurt me. Stop. And they do it 2 or 3 times. 3 or 4 times, actually. They're switching off on him. So finally, Nikolai was trained as a boxer. He had trained previously as a boxer. He says, stop. And I go, okay, you want? So all of a sudden he jumps up and he starts going like this, like he's butt. And Manny did, so he boom, right, left, right, and knocked him right over the bottom rope. And he's out cold on the bottom rope. Oh shit, here we go. And so everybody's standing around looking at each other like, where the hell do we go from this? What happens now? So it was Bugsy that finally jumped in the ring and started making a comeback on Nikolai. And I was the one that ended up dropping the fall to Manny at the end. I picked him up, carried him around, and somebody was laying down, and I tripped over backwards. He pinned me.
Have you got any more stories? Have you got any more stories about Donk? You must have more stories about Donk.
Oh, I didn't get around him too. He Blade. I don't know. He was kind of. He wasn't around too much. He would come and but he juiced himself, and I don't think he'd leave it until the next morning. He'd show up on TV all covered in blood. I couldn't figure out what the hell was going on. But there was Donk. That was Donk.
Did they?
I guess he was based with Paul Hogan, I imagine.
Did the WWF mean to hire Donk instead of Outback Jack? They must have.
Probably. Rackman he's kind of a be to himself guy. I don't know to do much. Never had talks with him, but didn't know him very well.
I'll give you 2 more, and then we shall wrap this podcast up. And number penultimate, if that's a number, Killer Carl Cox.
There's a good guy, yeah, the tough old man, and draw you money. Didn't one of those guys that just was would just people believed in him. He was not high flying, not but solid, believable. Another Buddy Colt type guy. Just the kind of guy you could put a belt on, for 3, 4, however long you want, and your baby face come on, move him on to the next belt, and just be a rock of your foundational piece of your territory. Good guy. Remember one that same Orlando was a rough town. I was a heel again. I was a heel again, and they started to come in the ring over the thing. But being a heel, you're afraid to hit anybody. If it comes down to it, you're gonna. But if they're just on the, you don't want to run over and hit anybody because you're the one that's going to get sued. So Cox used to pick him off, and he was the one that when the fans, because he was a babyface at the time, they loved him. So he would boom, he would drop the fans off the apron with Brenna. That one night he did anyway. But he was a rugged guy. They would. I remember one night with him. This story they told us, but somebody was playing car games with him, and they'd run his car off, and he always had a 38 or 357 or something in his bag that nobody knew. The guy went boom over the guy's head, and the guy scared shitless was running out in the field, running for his life. But he was good. He ended up as a prison guard in Texas. And he came down when we were in Houston. He came down to say hello to the guys. And he didn't know too many people. And I ended up, I knew him because I had worked with him. I'd worked with him quite a bit in Florida. And so he came into my life. Hey, Dick, and we talked. He was guarding some guy that had set a bomb off. It was sent a firebomb off in a nightclub, killed scores of people, and he was watching that guy he was a security for him in Houston. He ended up a prison guard in Houston or Texas somewhere. I'm pretty sure Houston. Was
that back in the day where the guards would tune you up just because you were just awful?
Probably, yeah. This was early NWA, so that'd be early '80s. Or later on in the '80s, because it's after when we started going on to Texas, so it'd have to be the mid '80s then.
We will go with our very final one. And if you don't have a good story, I've got one in the bag, but I'm going to give you Bullets Bob Armstrong.
Oh, man. He and I were tag partners for off and on in and out of Florida. Long time. He was a good hand. Boy, he gave me, what do you got, 4 or 5 sons that in the business that are all, his son Brad is a beautiful worker. Then the Road Dog, and I heard there's another guy that is one of his sons that I had.
There's Scott, Brian, Brad, and a fourth one.
I don't know. I know there's a couple, but you gave a bunch of kids to the business.
Was Bob Armstrong's arms as just awesome as in real life as they may have been on TV?
He worked out, he was in good shape. Always, he was a fireman. It was honestly, in real life, he was for real fireman outside of Atlanta there. One of those little satellite cities around Atlanta. And he was, honest to God, a real fireman and had gotten into, look at the family, right? You can look at all the sons. And so obviously Bob was just a natural. So somebody must have been the Gunkles or somebody, Ray Gunkel. Somebody in Atlanta broke him in there, and he got the wrestling bug and went on the road. He never went far from the South, I don't believe. He stayed around Atlanta, everything else, for quite a while.
One final thing before we shut the podcast down: did you ever arm wrestle him, and did you ever see him do bicep curls?
No, never arm wrestled. Was he a good arm wrestler?
No, I don't know. He's just got massive arms. He can't be that bad.
Oh.
That was speculation on my part as what turned out to be a really bad final question.
No, there's a couple guys who are arm wrestlers. I can't think of offhand now. But there's a couple guys who are arm wrestlers.
Scott Norton, there's one. I know one.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I met him in Japan. Nice guy. Taking bumps on your elbows all the time. I can't even straighten this arm up. Oh,
dear! And you've still got the tape on your finger as well. Is it getting better at least?
Oh, it still clicks. It still locks up. I leave it off once in a while. It's been on for a day or so.
Oh, for goodness sake! I tell you, it's you've got a bad tooth, bad finger. I've got bad guts. We're a pair of epidemics, aren't we?
Yeah, Living the life. Living large.
We're living the life. I'm living the life on the toilet almost all day today. But I'm going to, on that thought, I'm going to shut the podcast down. Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, dontherockmorocco.com, and there's probably other plugs as well. And do you know what? Because I've never done it before on this show, I wrote 2 books. By them, Owen Hart, King of Pranks, and The Rock, Dwayne The Rock Johnson from WWE to Hollywood. So buy them as well. Do me a favour. But for now, we're going to shut this podcast down, and we're going to record another one that will be released the week after. I've given up on the pretense that we're meeting up every week. All right then. So for me, James. Oh yeah, that camera as well. For me, James. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll catch you next week.